One of the few things all life has in common is death, presenting an obstacle to us all, prompting questions and theories attempting to explain the phenomenon, as evidenced through the presence of theories including afterlives, reincarnation, and deities, often communicated through religious or literary or artistic means. One of these deities created surrounding death, largely independent of religion and sense, was the Grim Reaper, which was created at a time of widespread death in Europe. The entity was created as a combination of commonplace objects in the time period, being depicted as a skeletal figure brandishing a farmer's scythe on a funeral minister's black robes. This solidified the people's need to make the abstract and unpredictable concept of death approachable using familiar objects. For this reason, the Grim Reaper provided an easy and understandable way to confront the topic of death in literature, eventually finding its way to the silver screen. As previously stated, death is something that will happen to everyone. It is the one thing nobody can escape, and as such is frequently used to tackle the theme of determinism. Determinism is a concept explored by Sam Harris in his 2012 book Free Will, in which he states free will is an illusion. Our wills are simply not of our own making. Also stating, we do not have the freedom we think we have. The idea that our entire lives and deaths have already been solidified is an idea many people find chilling, due to the implications it provides, suggesting the autonomy and choice we have in our daily lives are not authentic. Whilst this may provide an odd sense of comfort or safety for some, for most it presents a sense of intrigue and horror, opening the door to ask just how conscious and autonomous we really are as individuals. A question that is tackled over and over in films, through tropes such as the fantasy chosen one trope, the sci-fi time travel subgenre, and of course, a personified death and horror. The Swedish 1957 horror fantasy film The Seventh Seal presents death as being an inevitable force that can only be offset temporarily. In the film, Death plays a game of chess against the desperate knight Antonius, allowing him to prolong his life for a brief time until death inevitably wins at the end, and thus claiming his life. In the film, death has a physical presence characterized by an unnaturally pale face and a long dark robe covering most of their body, reminiscent of the Grim Reaper. They are an unpredictable and persistent character, interestingly appearing to find a sense of joy in their job, emphasized largely through their actions with Antonius, allowing him to wager a game of chess for his life and tricking him in order to hear a confession, reinforced later when death takes the life of an actor by physically sawing down a tree, as shown in the following scene.
Hantverkarskolan, vad skönt. Fan i mig, är det mitt träd de tänker såga ner? Hörru din förtuppare taskfrans, vad tänker du göra med mitt trä, va? Kan du inte svara åtminstone hövlighet kostar så lite? Vem är nu egentligen? Jag sågar ner i träd. Eftersom din tid är ute. Det går inte, jag har inte tid. Har du inte tid? Nej, jag har min föreställning. Ja, den är inställd. På grund av dödsfall. Men min kontrakt?
In the scene, Death gleefully states, I am sawing down your tree since your time is up, indicating that everyone has a time in which they are destined to die, reinforcing themes of determinism. As if our deaths are predetermined, our lives likely are too. The decision to have death physically saw down this tree is also significant, as to others within the world of the film, the tree simply blew over in a storm. A common accidental occurrence, however. By having death use a hacksaw, an object familiar to us as viewers, it makes the death feel and look real and deliberate, once again reinforcing a deterministic outlook, whilst once again making an abstract concept palatable through familiar means. The 1964 film Masque of the Red Death takes a similar approach to death. The film follows a cruel Prince Prospero hiding away from the Red Death, a plague in his land, believing himself to be safe until inevitably death catches up with him. The use of the robe, whilst being used as a disguise for death, is also symbolic of the Grim Reaper and other depictions of the character, with the interesting change of making it red rather than the traditional black that is associated with death and mourning. This change could be interpreted as death being out for blood, specifically targeting the prince and his guests due to their mistreatment of the peasantry and mockery of death itself. This point is furthered when we abide by Bellatoni's belief that red associated with blood extends to the association with both pain and healing, telling of how the Red Death brings about pain, but could be argued to be healing the world of its greed and injustice. The presence of the Red Death in the palace reinforces a deterministic outlook that nobody is safe, regardless of their power and wealth, a point that gets heavily reinforced by the final line of the film, which states, "Darkness, death, and the Red Death held dominion over all." The film also makes an interesting decision to have Prospero unmask the figure, only to find his own bloodied reflection staring back at him, alluding to the fact that he simply cannot outrun death, just as one cannot outrun themselves or their own shadow. It is also representative of the fact that Prospero's efforts to escape his death unknowingly caused it, due to his neglect of the realm, allowing the Red Death to consume all before it eventually reached him, putting an interesting twist in the theme of determinism. Both The Seventh Seal and The Mask of the Red Death take similar approaches to portraying the entity of death, envisioning them as a stoic, all-knowing and foreboding presences, interestingly embodying the Oxford Dictionary's description of a monster as a divine potent or warning. This is made most obvious in both films through the guidance given to central characters at different points throughout. Though these approaches are both similar, it changes in narrative purpose and atmosphere that is present when the entities are on screen, with death from the Seventh Seal having a sense of dread for both the viewer and character, whilst the Red Death's presence feels like it's more of an anticipation and excitement to see justice exacted on those deserving of it. But why is this so significant? Why do we find fictional entities such as death conveyed in this way so appealing to watch? One of the largest reasons is because death in both these films and many others in the horror genre present us with a way and direction to focus our feelings of anticipation, dread, existentialism, and more. This allows us to speak and come to terms with the inevitability of death and question a deterministic worldview vicariously through the characters death interacts with, allowing us to see, communicate, reason, and explain forces in a way that simply cannot be achieved in the real world, serving a similar function the Grim Reaper did upon its previously mentioned inception in Europe. To conclude, as conscious beings we question everything around us, and unfortunately not all these questions can be fully answered, only theorized, prompting us to create other ways of asking and communicating these questions, including turning broad concepts such as death and autonomy into something we can understand and relate to, notably an entity, allowing us to tackle these topics, come to terms with the realities of life, and create our belief systems in a more easy and engaging way.